Hello everyone, welcome back to Ansarkari. In this video, we'll be starting with the topic of proportion. So in this video, we'll be understanding that what exactly is meant by proportion and the major four topics or the major four questions that are asked with regard to proportion. So let's begin with the topic of proportion. So I can just write here, proportion. Now, what exactly is proportion? So proportion means comparison of ratios, which means that if there are two given ratios, for example, A ratio B and C ratio D, for example, these are two ratios. So I will be comparing these two ratios. How will I compare? The way we write them is A ratio B. This is the sign of proportion. This is the sign of proportion. And then I will write C ratio D. Now, what this means is when we compare these ratios, it means that the ratio of A to B is same to that of C to D, right? Or we can say that A upon B is equal to C upon D in very simple words. So this is another conclusion that we can draw from this equation. Okay, this is the sign of proportion and these are two given ratios जिनको कि हम compare कर रहे हैं. And इसका मतलब क्या होता है कि A upon B will be equal to C upon D. Or we can also write कि A multiplied by D will be equal to B multiplied by C. This is another conclusion that we can draw. Therefore, if there are any two ratios which are in proportion, which are comparing and they're in proportion, it would mean that when we divide these two, like when we divide A by B and C by D, they will be equal. And also, when we multiply A by D and B by C, then also they will be equal. Now let us understand the various three types of questions that are asked with regard to proportion or three major concepts under this topic. Now, the first is mean proportion. So what does mean proportion mean? So as we're talking about this term mean that is written, so it basically means that when we are given a ratio, that is A ratio B, we need to find such a number. Suppose the number is X. So we need to find such a number whose ratio to A will be same as its ratio to B. In other words, or in simpler words, this number X, it should be such a number whose ratio will be equal. When we write A ratio X, it will be in proportion to the ratio of X ratio B. When we write it, A ratio X, it is in proportion with X ratio B. So as the term suggests, mean, यानी कि इन्होंने के बीच का ऐसा एक नंबर होना चाहिए, right? Again, when we compare them, so A upon X is equal to X upon B. This is what it means. So we can here write X square will be equal to A multiplied by B, right? We just shifted the variables. तो X क्या होएगा? जो mean proportion हम निकालने की बात कर रहे हैं, whenever we are asked to find out mean proportion of a particular ratio, then this variable X will be considered as the mean. So in order to find out the mean or X, we have to do under root of A multiplied by B because it is square. So when it will go to right hand side, it will become under root. Right? Therefore, the value of X will be equal to root of A multiplied by B. So this is how we find out the mean proportion. Now let us go to the third proportion. So third proportion. Again, as the term suggests, third, यानी कि यहाँ पे we are talking about some third entity. So suppose here we are given A ratio B, which is a given ratio. Now we need to find such a third variable whose ratio is equal to that of A to B. For example, जो A to B का ratio होगा, that will be same to B's ratio to X. This is what the third proportion, यानी कि third variable, एक third entity यहाँ पे आ रही है. How will we write it? A ratio B will be equal to, perhaps we have to write the proportion sign here first, will be in proportion with B ratio X. This is what it means. Now what happens is, here we can write A upon B will be equal to B upon X. Now when we shift X to this particular side, we have here B multiplied by B divided by E, or X will be equal to B squared divided by E. So here we're talking about third proportion. और ये third proportion यहाँ पे है क्या? It is X in itself. Right? कि जो रेशियो A का B के साथ होएगा, B का X के साथ भी वही होना चाहिए. In the mean part, the X was a number that was in mid, right, of A and B. वहाँ पर A का X के साथ ratio and should be equal to X का B के साथ ratio. Here the orders have changed, right? And this is the third entity that is, or the third proportion that is, we are considering. Therefore, we can say in order to find out third proportion, X should be equal to B squared upon A. So if we are given the ratio, we can put the values here. We can do the square of B and divide it by A, and then we'll get the answer or the value of X. Right? So this was about the third proportion. I hope you all understood this part. Now let us move on to the fourth proportion. So, fourth proportion. When we talk about fourth proportion, again, as the term suggests here, a fourth entity is invited. How come is it invited? Here we'll have three numbers, A, B, and C. For example, in the previous two cases, that is of mean proportion and third proportion, we had just two numbers, that is A and B. Here, we will have three such numbers, A, B, and C. Sorry. And we'll try to find out the fourth number, that is here X, right? Which we need to find out. So here what is important is the ratio that A has with B and B has with C. Here we are comparing the same ratio should be that of जो A का B के साथ ratio है. Or perhaps I went wrong here. So जो A का B के साथ ratio है, that should be same with the C ratio to X in very simple words. So when I write it in this form, A ratio B should be in proportion with C ratio X. Very simple meaning, A का जो B के साथ ratio है, it should be equal to C ratio to X or in proportion with, in line with. So I can write here in this form, A upon B is equal to C upon X. Again, when we need to find out X, it will be B multiplied by C upon E. So this is the way that we find out the fourth proportion. So there are three such types now, that is mean, then we have third, and then we have fourth. These are the three types of proportion that we can find out. So these are the three formulas. Now in next video, we'll cover some important questions on proportion. Thank you.